Hey everyone, it is Matthew from Miscellaneous Debris, and Avengers Infinity War is less than 2 weeks away from hitting cinemas all over the country, and we here at Miscellaneous Debris want to celebrate 10 great years and 18 films by seeing whose installment reigns supreme. That being said, we present you with the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe ranked in 10 minutes or less. Maybe. Number 18, The Incredible Hulk. What is considered the bastard stepson of the MCU, and Edward Norton's only appearance as Hulk and Bruce Banner, The Incredible Hulk is far from a bad movie. Is it great? No. Is it a turn your brain off for 90 minutes and enjoy a flick? Absolutely. Had Edward Norton wanted to sign on and do more films in the MCU, I'm sure that this film would be revered a little bit more than it is. But the appearance of General Ross in Captain America Civil War reminds us that Kevin Feige and company have not forgotten about this one. Number 16 and 17, Iron Man 2 and Thor: The Dark World. I'm combining these two because they suffer from essentially the same faults. They both have weak follow-up stories to their predecessors and underwhelming villains. That's not to say that Malekith and Whiplash are unworthy, no pun intended, of their appearances in the MCU. It's just that the actors picked for these roles seem like they just didn't want to be there. Christopher Eccleston has since admitted that he took the role squarely for money and that he hated being in the makeup chair for 6 hours every single day. They also suffered from having the burden of widening the MCU with the inclusion of new characters and the introduction of Infinity Stones. Number 15, Thor. Oh no, not Thor again. Yes, again. Kenneth Branagh's Norse God origin story was the MCU's introduction into the cosmos, which was done subtly and done well. There were many that thought Thor was such a gamble when it was first announced, but in hindsight, we can look back and say that most of the decisions that were made early on in the MCU were all gambles, so this was no exception. The movie was well executed and accomplished its goal of introducing us to not only Thor, but the best villain to date in the MCU, Loki. Number 14, Iron Man 3. This film divides fans in half for one simple reason: the Mandarin. Or, rather, Trevor Slattery. At the time, this was the most backlash of any decision in the MCU thus far. The choice to reveal the Mandarin as a drug-abusing drunk actor only playing the part of a terrorist. In addition to that, the overall Extremis story arc is rather muddy due to the lack of explanation as to exactly what it does and why it does what it does. What ended up being is just an average film for what should have been an above-average film given the villain and the criteria involved. Number 13, Ant-Man. Who doesn't love Paul Rudd? This entry into the MCU asks the question, if Ocean's 11 had to have a superhero element to it, what would it look like? Directorial issues in the early stages notwithstanding, Ant-Man told a slightly above-average redemption story of a man doing the wrong things for the right reasons. It's a warm and fuzzy, feel-good, self-contained story with overarching connections to the MCU, but not directly affecting it in any major way. It was overall a welcome addition and a hilarious addition into the MCU. Number 12, Captain America, The First Avenger. In the words of Kevin Feige, at the time it was a huge risk doing a period piece, but Cap's story is inherently in World War II. But in my eyes, it would have been the only choice to make. It was doubted whether Chris Evans would be able to pull off the titular hero, but he delivered in spades. Not only that, the Red Skull gave Loki a run for his money as far as the best villains in the early MCU, and the explanation of how Steve Rogers would be found in modern times was told in a believable way, for a comic book movie anyway. Number 11, The Avengers. I was sitting there in the theater watching for the first time Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America in the forest, battling it out. I turned to the person next to me, had no idea who they were, and said, "I'm totally geeking out right now." And having that person just grin at me like an idiot and nod their head in agreement was one of the best feelings in the world. At the time, this movie was the culmination of what the MCU was up to at that point in time, and it did feel like a bookend to that story that began in 2008. Looking back on it now, it was clear that there was more going on to the story than met the eye. The development of the Loki character, the effects on what the story would have on Iron Man down the line, and finally gave us a post-credits tag that was heard and assigned as homework around the world. Number 10, Spider-Man: Homecoming. There's not much to say about this film except it boils down to having a great script, a great cast, and a great director. All of our hopes for what an MCU Spider-Man movie would look like was met, and nerds around the world rejoiced. Tom Holland and Michael Keaton were fantastic in the lead roles and were both very sympathetic in their respective character arcs. It was a great throwback to the classy 80s movies that I grew up watching, like 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club. Besides the fact that the Vulture is one of the best villains the MCU has seen in a very long time since Loki, or Killmonger in number 9, Black Panther. What started as a story about a king ascending to the throne has turned into a cultural phenomenon. The way that Marvel built this fictitious location of Wakanda and wove it into the cultural narrative of the MCU was nothing short of immaculate, with characters like Shuri and M'Baku standing out above the rest. Every character had a defined presence and a set of principles that guided them throughout the entire movie, and those are very rarely established in early MCU films. Killmonger stands out as one of the MCU's best villains since Loki, as we've mentioned before, and one of the main reasons for this is because you identify with that character. No matter how insane their ideas and actions may be, it still garners sympathy from an audience. A feat not often achieved, and my head is off to Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler helming the entire project. Number 8, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Taking what worked with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and dialing it up to 11, James Gunn's follow-up to the breakout hit surpassed expectations, with visually stunning locations and a heartfelt story about family, love, and loss. Star-Lord and company bring everything that made us fall in love with them, and then some. What drug this entry down for me was the Sovereign story arc. It seemed to me like Adam Warlock's inclusion in this movie was written as a post-credit stinger, and at that point, it was written backwards as to how to get to that point in time. Not much was given on thought of proper motivation for the Sovereign. Stealing from someone is not exactly a reason to release your entire army onto a group of people. Ego's inclusion fell also a little bit flat. I was just expecting a little bit more in that respect, seeing as how he is a living planet. They did make him into be a celestial, but still a good movie and one of the better entries in Phase 3. Number 7, Doctor Strange. In MCU's olive branch to the ever-growing population of pot smokers in the world, Doctor Strange was our introduction into the mystic arts. While Strange's story arc is almost identical to Tony Stark's, it does not take anything away from how spectacular this film looked. Seeing Steve Ditko's pages brought to life was a joy to behold. This film did suffer from a typical throwaway villain such as Miscellaneous, but it did give us our first look into more interdimensional villains like Dormammu. Also, the inclusion of the Eye of Agamotto as a Infinity Stone, being the Time Stone, was a great connection to tie Doctor Strange into the overall MCU. Number 6, Avengers Age of Ultron. That's right, I said it. I think Age of Ultron is better than Avengers 1. Fight me. Joss Whedon's follow-up to the juggernaut that was the first Avengers film was everything that you could have wanted and more. Speaking of more, it did seem like there were two different versions of this film that were being presented. Joss Whedon's version, which seemed like he wanted to stay with a single Ultron story, whereas Marvel wanted the director to help set up a lot was what to come in Phase 3. The action sequences were some of the best in the MCU I've ever seen, and the locations were the first time the films really presented the fact that they were a global phenomenon. Number 5, Captain America Civil War. What many saw as Avengers 2.0... What many saw as Avengers 2.5, I saw as a heartbreaking film about family and the choices we make to protect that family. Taking out the sheer amount of coincidences that need to happen in order for Zemo's plan to work, the result is the same. Cap continues to protect the only real family he has left, and that is Bucky. The Avengers are Buck's adoptive family, but if you want to look at it that way, the Avengers are Cap's adoptive family, if you want to look at it that way, but Bucky is his real family. OG since the early 1900s. The inclusion and introduction of Black Panther and Spider-Man is just the icing on the cake for the best fight sequence in all of the MCU. Number 4, Iron Man. To say that what started the MCU back in May 8th of 2008, Iron Man was beyond a risk. Starting a superhero franchise with a B-list character, so to speak, with an upstart movie studio that had to get financing through a bond company. In their words, if Iron Man didn't do well, then the studio wouldn't be around for very much longer. But who would have guessed what happened? No one that didn't read the comic books, but the fans knew what could be, and the announcement of Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark made hardcore fans like me stop and say, whoa, that is the smartest casting decision I've ever seen in my life. It still holds up with the best superhero films of any franchise in any studio. The journey that Tony Stark to Iron Man and the fall of Obadiah Stane and the beginning of one of the biggest franchises in cinema history marks a great addition to this list. Number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1.
ooga chaka, ooga, ooga, ooga chaka, ooga, ooga, ooga chaka, ooga, ooga, ooga chaka, ooga, ooga.
Number 2, Thor Ragnarok. Where has this version of Thor been? This is by far and away the funniest MCU film that has been released, not to mention contains one of the best buddy stories in years. The chemistry between all the cast is evident on screen, and you can just tell that everyone had a blast working on this film. It shows in the finished product and within the audience reception. Cate Blanchett's Hela is a more captivating villain than we're normally used to in the MCU, which seems to be a growing trend with the introduction of Killmonger and soon-to-be Thanos. Number 1, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Give the Russo brothers an MCU script and they will make vibranium out of it. You see what I did there? Captain America: The Winter Soldier gives The Dark Knight a run for its money in terms of the best comic book film of all time. What is presented as the finished product was so polished and, dare I say, grown up for a comic book adaptation. The Winter Soldier brings the political thriller genre to its knees. Robert Redford's Secretary Pierce and the inclusion of Hydra taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. was felt throughout the entire MCU, not to mention bleeding into the TV show of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. This movie answered the question of where Cap fits into the 21st century, and what ideals does he have to call into question from his previous time to the present. Also, the Winter Soldier was the first villain in the MCU not only to be featured as a main antagonist, but is also the member of the Avengers themselves. It is amazing to see how far the characters of Bucky Barnes, Steve Rogers, and Falcon have all come. What did you think of our list? Do you agree with our picks? What would your rankings look like? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click around the channel for more great content, and as always, I've been Matthew from Miscellaneous Debris. Keep on living that dream, and we'll see you soon.